All praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we seek His aid, His forgiveness. We ask Him to send His prayers and salutations upon His final Prophet and Messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon those who follow Him exactly in faith. I bear witness there is no true God worthy of worship except for Allah, and that He is without partner associated with Him. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His final Prophet and Messenger. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we're here today for this important topic of marriage itself. Very, very intriguing, the actual topic, or the title, A Marriage Made in Heaven or Match Made in Hell. Something like this, I think. It's, subhanallah, when the brothers asked me as regards to this topic, and I was thinking, that how should we approach this, especially that we involve our parents as well as extended members of the family. Everybody wants to have a piece of the cake, so to speak. Without doubt, the thought of marriage for many youngsters, it brings back or brings into mind frightful thoughts. Going to somebody's house, some 52nd auntie you never even heard of. You're going to be interrogated. You're going to have all these weird and wonderful customs. You don't know what the codes are. Eat this means yes. Drink that means no. So, at the end of the day, we should make ourselves aware first and foremost of what it is that we're getting into. For the parents, of course, for them, there's also anxiety, believe it or not. For them, finding a perfect daughter-in-law or perfect son-in-law, no doubts you'll have parents with questions in their head. What does he do? What does she do? What that means really is how much they earn, or how much is coming to the household. That relates to the size of the wallet, of course. Will they be up to the standards that we expect? How much gold is expected to be brought into the house? All these questions, and of course, if it's a girl, for our sisters, the first question is going to be that killer: can she cook? That's the be it and end all of all questions. After that, there are no other questions. Well, of course, brothers, they care about their daughters, or they care about their sons. Mum's cooking. There's a very, very high standard to be met. So, of course, such questions will be asked, to be expected, of course. Of course, the other thing will be that when you get to the house, what if that person is not the person that I'm looking for? I want to say no, but how can I say without offending? What will my parents think? Why? Because mum and dad always know best. Always are, alhamdulillah. Or sometimes the parents think they know the best, not necessarily. So here, first and foremost, we should ask this question. And this is especially so for the ones who are involved in arranging that marriage, the parents. And that question will be, first and foremost, what is the purpose of marriage? Is it to bring a servant into the house? Is it to bring a breadwinner into the house? That is a fundamental question we should be asking. Marriage itself, from the very most fundamental answers to this question, is that it is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, فَمَنْ رَضِبَ عَنْ سُنَّةِ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah, my tradition, is not from amongst me. And here we find that parents, as well as sometimes those getting married, they fail to understand the whole purpose of marriage. The whole purpose of marriage is to create an institution, a structure, a unit whereby it will be based upon fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and hoping of Allah's mercy This is the basic, or the basis, the fundamentals upon which a marriage should be based upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran, هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ, that they are a covering, libas, for you, and you are the same for them. Just like the cloth which covers the body, protects it, shelters it, hides it. Similarly, a husband and wife, they play a similar role for each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, والله جعل لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا وجعل لكم من أزواجكم بنين وحفدة ورزقكم من الطيبات. Allah has made for you wives of your own kind, meaning of your own nature, and has made for you from your wives sons and grandsons, and has bestowed on you good provision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also in another ayah says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنَا خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And among his signs, and here the scholars, they said, these are things for you to open your eyes, indicate Allah's greatness, that He, from His signs, has created for you partners, mates, from among yourselves, that you may dwell there, or that you may dwell in tranquility with them, that you have peace between yourselves, and He has put love and mercy between your hearts. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for the slave of Allah, that we have a partner, a man and woman, whereby they fulfill their roles in a halal way. That relationship, both physical, emotional, psychological, all these relationships are fulfilled in a halal way, in order that there be a peaceful, loving, merciful relationship between them. And of course, one of the reasons why that we also marry is in order that we contribute to the size of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet said, تزوجوا الودود فإني مكاثر بكم الأمم, that marry those who are loving and fertile, for I'll be proud of your great numbers before the other nations. And of course, as part of that marriage, one of the outcomes that we all expect is that we become mummies and daddies, that we have children, inshallah. Relating back to the previous hadith we heard, in order to make the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam large, to make him proud of us. Of course, this goes against all those preconceived ideas of 2.4 children. That's a Western concept. Now it's probably 1.5 children. But here, alhamdulillah, for the Muslims, we have that faith, we have that belief. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives us our rizq. Wallahu khayrul raziqeen. That Allah is the best of those who sustain, the best of providers. So that when we have children, they are a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are those which will benefit us after we die. That if we bring our children up to be righteous, pious children, as the Prophet ﷺ said, in the hadith, when a person dies, all of his deeds, all his actions, they come to an end, they cease, they stop, except for three. And the Prophet mentioned an ongoing act of charity, sadaqah jariyah. He mentioned beneficial knowledge that you leave behind. And he mentions, ﷺ, a righteous child, walad is mentioned, that the boy or girl who will pray for him. This is one of the things that will help us when our actions have stopped and we're dead and buried. Brothers and sisters, Here, the main topic of discussion here, which I've been asked to do, is choosing the desired wife. What is the correct way? Okay, let's try a different approach. We should go to Google, Sheikh Google, and find the dating service. We'll say, she looks beautiful. She's got nice long brown black hair or blonde hair. She's got nice green eyes. Okay? And we should go on a date with them. And maybe she'll like our son or daughter, or maybe she'll like the person or not. And maybe she'll marry and be faithful for a year. I think you're getting the drift now. Of course, it's not the correct way. We don't do it that way. There is a way in which to get your perfect spouse. Who is your perfect spouse? The one who is so beautiful that every time she walks down the road, all the men are ogling at her. Or the man who wears, he's dressed in a flashy way and he's chatting to every second female on the street. Is that what our sisters want as a husband? Or the one, that she has to be experienced. We don't want somebody who doesn't know about relationships. That she's had a few relationships. Is that the wife we want? That when you marry such a person, every other phone call that comes in, there's going to be what? Suspicion and doubt. Oh, who was that person? Male or female? Oh, who was he? What kind of relationship? What friendship? Is that who we want? Or the boy, vice versa. Every other number in his phone book belongs to a girl. Why? We're just friends. Is that what we want for our children? Parents, when we choose, Subhan Allah, one thing we have to remember, that the Prophet ﷺ said, each and every one of you is accountable. You are somebody who is going to be held accountable. Each one of you is a shepherd. And that person will be responsible for everybody under their care. The man is a shepherd over his wife and children. And the woman is a shepherd, or she is accountable of those who are under her care, or what is under her care, such as the children and the wealth of the man. So each and every one of us has to be accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we consider marriage, here the question should be, what kind of spouse are we looking for? Whether it's for our children, whether it's for ourselves. What kind of relationship will it result in? For sure, anybody who's marrying only to have a trophy wife or a trophy husband, model looks, everyone stares at that person. If that is the reason, it's one of the reasons you can do. Nothing wrong with that. It's one of the 4 reasons the Prophet ﷺ said that we can marry for the looks. For sure, nothing wrong with that. But how long will those looks last? Beauty, what? 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years? Lines come in. It's only so much that makeup and foundation and all these creams can conceal. Or so much dye that we can use, brothers. We're going to grow old, grey and aged one day. Beauty is a temporary thing. You're marrying somebody because of the size of the salary they bring in. Today you have a job, tomorrow you don't. The markets go bust tomorrow, then what? Bad business decisions. No sales in the market. So if you're marrying for that, what happens when the money's gone? Ma'asalama, goodbye, we'll go on to the next one. That's not one of the reasons. Are we marrying because of the family? Because if we marry to his family, it'll give us good position, it will give us good status. Qabila. We are a certain category of caste in our culture. So what? Today that caste is high. Tomorrow something may happen, Nobody looks at that person. And then what? Where's your izzah? Where's your honor? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That the most honorable of you in the sight of Allah is the one with most taqwa. So what's left? What's left? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to stay silent now.
Religion.
Ah, mashallah, that was quick. I'll keep him talking. Religion. Your deen. Marry for the taqwa, for the commitment to religion. Above all, we're not saying, the scholars they say, it's not forbidden to marry for these other reasons. But as the Prophet ﷺ said, above all of these, marry her for her religious commitment. If you can find a marriage partner who has the whole package, Noorun ala Noor, light upon light. Excellent. Alhamdulillah. That's what everyone is looking for. But here, first and foremost, we have to say and remind ourselves, not kid ourselves, that nobody's going to get that diamond, that perfect package. No matter how beautiful or how handsome a person is, no matter whatever they have of wealth and status and family and so forth, there's always going to be some flaws. There's always going to be some errors, some mistake you'll find in that person. Doesn't matter if they're the most knowledgeable person. Doesn't matter who that person is or what that person is. There will always be something you'll find in that person which you won't like. Whether it's a husband, whether it's a wife. And that's why, as we said, that the one who sees deen in that person, that is a person we should choose above all else. Here, question is then, how do we know? Many people say, well, that person got a beard, or that sister was niqab. But how would you know that person? Some people say, oh, you get to know them first. Okay, get to know them how? What, should we go dating? We walk hand in hand down the river? No, not allowed in Islam. So how? It's a big question. Many people say, well, how do we get to know? First and foremost, how would you know a person about their deen? Anybody? I'm going to throw the question to yourselves now. If you want to know about a person's deen, what's the first thing you look to, brother?
You can go and ask your local imam.
Okay, so you said about references from local imam of a person. Why? Why would you ask imam?
Because if he's a regular attending mosque.
Jazakallah khair. First and foremost, anybody who has that commitment to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 5 times a day, that's much better than someone who doesn't. That shows that there's khawf, there's fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That shows that they have some relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First and foremost will be the salah. That's a very good indicator in general. I'm not saying that that's the be and end of all of it. That is the first question you should be asking. How are they with regards to their prayer? Why? Because if they're keeping their duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that manner, inshallah, they will have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many other things as well. What else? Anybody? That's an action of worship. When we see a person, what makes you smile when you see a person? Or what makes you feel relaxed when you see a person?
His character.
Allah is khair. Their character. Their manners that they have with friends, with family, with those they know, with those they don't know, with those who are older than them and those who are younger than them. And that's why when the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, if a person comes to you seeking the hand of your daughter in marriage, and he has 2 things, he has deen and good akhlaq, do not refuse him. Because if you do, fitna will enter the land. Trials and tribulation will enter the land. 2 things. See that he has good Islam, deen, and he has good akhlaq. These 2 will always go as the perfect package in inverted commas. these two things. See how that person is. Do you see them respecting their elders? Do you see them respecting their youngsters? How are they with members of their family? How are they with the non-Muslims? How are they with Muslims? Investigate. Your friends and family. Go and send your people to where the person prays. Where's the sister? Does she attend circles? How is she with her members of family? Send your women folk. Ask somebody. Here, investigation has to be made, without doubt. Not only just taking one person's word for it, but rather see where she works. What does she do? Those who are employed with her, or with him, vice versa. Both ways. We cannot take the approach of the non-Muslims, where we need to get to know them. When the scholars were asked as regards to how much you can interact with somebody who is not your wife yet, very simple. They said, in a nutshell, go and see. She reveals herself to you, you see her, she sees you. Talk, ask questions, whatever you have. And then you make your istikhara. It's a simple process. If a person has full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if that person makes istikhara after seeing, and then they place the reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after taking shura from the people, taking advice, then inshallah, no sin on that person. What happens after that? Why? They will do everything in the halal way. If you start off in the correct manner, inshallah, that is a good firm foundation. If you start off on a rocky foundation, just like we build a building, you can never have rocky foundation or soft foundation. It has to be firm. When you build a house, you level the foundations and you build on that. Not on something crooked which surrounds it, can topple and fall, or something which was sinked into the foundations. It has to be firm foundations. So building the foundation upon iman and taqwa, first and foremost. Now some of the problems that we face today, let's look at that. That when we look at a possible son-in-law or daughter-in-law, sadly, in many situations, the daughter-in-law seems to get worse off than the man. And here, we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, if this is me, or my daughter, or my sister, or my mother even, if she was in that situation, that somebody else is to look after her, what do you expect? Because too often, one of the major problems in many marriages, and the problems in those marriages when they become very unstable, and we see this from many different incidents and cases that come to us, that the biggest problem is the fact that there is a lot of, a lot of influence, a lot of stress and pressure coming from in-laws. If you want the truth of the matter, what the scholars have said is that when a woman gets married, she should not be in the household of the parents. Now this goes against a lot of cultures. And it's shocking for them. Oh, how can you say you want to live away from us? Subhan Allah. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed us to his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when he would marry, he would have a different house for his wife. He would not, okay, somebody might say, but he didn't have parents. That's true. But in terms of the extended relationships, his wife did have parents, but they had that respect, they had that sensitivity that newly marrieds need to have time to build that relationship between themselves. And one of the factors which puts a lot of stress is the external influence of in-laws sometimes. I'm not saying don't go visit, but this is one of the factors that is a cause of much problems in marriages today. Yes, if the daughter-in-law comes to live in my house, I should respect her. I shouldn't be treating her like she's another servant in the house. And again, this is one of the problems that some people are facing today. And that's why it's important to build the first few years of marriage. The newlyweds should have that privacy. Should be allowed to make their own mistakes. Parents, from the goodness of their hearts, what they like is to advise. Why? Experience. And they say nothing like experience. But here, every person needs to get on their own 2 feet and to go forward with their lives. They should be allowed to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. Unless, of course, it's a major mistake which is going to harm both the husband and wife, or the issue of iman or safety. But in general, let people make their own ijtihad, their own personal reasonings in the matter. So this is one of the things really that when we get married, we should be looking at in order to safeguard any fitna in the marriage. Without doubt, the daughter should treat, or the wife should treat the parents as if it's her own parents. Why? If she does that, the husband will have more love for her. By serving them, she's pleasing her husband. And the hadith of Rasulullah, that any woman, if her husband dies whilst he's pleased with her, it will be the key for her to enter paradise. Subhan Allah. Now on the other hand, we look at the choice which is being made. Choosing a wife sometimes can be very tricky. Why? On the one hand, we want to please parents. On the other hand, we want to please our own selves, our own personal preferences. And one of the things that is really, really missing in our societies today is communicating with our parents of what we need. Sometimes men feel shy to say what they want. They feel, if I say something, my parents will be upset. But here, brothers, what we have to understand, this is an issue for the rest of your life. When a person gets married, it's not supposed to be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's supposed to be a long term, till death do us part, basically. For sure, sometimes in a marriage, things may occur which are beyond our control. Sometimes things don't work out. قدر الله ما شاء فعل. But at least you have put yourself in that situation where you chose in the correct fashion. It was your choice as well. You weren't forced into it. And sadly, we hear a lot of this forced marriage. Forced marriage is synonymous with Islam, sadly. Wherever you hear forced marriages, those are all Muslims that do forced marriages. Subhanallah. The Sharia forbids any woman to be forced against her will in marriage. At the same time, this applies to the man as well. Both partners must be willing partners in that union. And sometimes what happens is that a person enters into marriage. And this, we hear this again for sisters, for brothers. And for the sake of pleasing their parents, they're not even happy about that person. But they're told, if this will happen, if you say no, then this is going to happen to you. Or you will bring shame upon our family. And sadly what happens? Unwillingly, but unable to say, they enter into the marriage. Just for the sake of keeping the parents happy. Yes, without doubt, noble for the sake of Allah. But then, the outcome comes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later. Unhappy. different lifestyles, no understanding, no communication, hatred, until that marriage can no longer, the cracks are no longer resealable. They cannot be prepared, they can't be repaired. And then it results in a breakup of that marriage. Here, if only people are honest from the beginning, if only we say what's in our hearts, it doesn't mean that we're rejecting or being disobedient. Because some parents may say, this is my daughter's being disobedient, or my son has been disobedient. Well, we have to understand that this choice, when it's made, somebody has to live with the consequence of that decision. Putting two people together, it's not a difficult thing. But what happens down the line? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And even if they separate amicably in a nice fashion, then who are the victims? It's none other than the children, if there are children in the marriage. So these things have a knock-on effect. And parents have to understand this. Yes, for sure, parents want the best for their children. But they should also look at the happiness of their children. And similarly, the children sometimes should also look to the happiness of their parents. If you can find somebody who your parents approve of. Because the converse happens sometimes. Brother wants to marry a sister. Parents are unhappy. So what do? They run off. And they find some sheikh or some Maulvi to do the nikah. Subhan Allah. Under the Sharia, nobody has a right to take the position of the wali, of the father, his guardianship, except if there is a Shari'i condition. And then the judge will actually rule on that. But here, people sometimes, young brothers and young sisters become self-made scholars. They make their own fatwa. Yes, halal. Because why? My parents disagreed and they should disagree. And it's against the Sharia. Subhanallah. Maybe there are reasons. I remember a few years ago when some of our brothers used to have discussion about marriage and how some parents are refusing them to marry their daughters. So I asked the question, brother, what are you doing? Oh, well, I'm looking for work. MashaAllah. You bring Sarah into their house, you're going to feed her, you're going to clothe her, you're going to shelter her, like her father shelters her. Yeah, MashaAllah. Obviously, if you are a father, and you have a daughter, she's your princess. You kept her, you clothed her, you fed her, you kept her safe. And you're going to throw your daughter just like that? To anybody? You have the right. She has the right to be kept in the same way as she was in her father's house. Brothers, if you can't afford it, move on to the next one. That's as simple as it goes. She has the right. Unless she agrees, or her family also agrees, to go down a step. So you're going from your Rolls Royce to your Ford. Or whatever. Yes. That's her right. So when brothers talk about this, they didn't agree, maybe there's a valid reason for it. The father is looking out for his daughter. So here for the brothers, the advice always will be that if you want to get married, can you be a man? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that the men are the protectors over the women. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala don't say the males. Males are many. Males are many. But it is a man, a real man, who can feed, shelter and clothe. He can take on the responsibility of looking after the needs of another human being. If I'm living in my father's pocket, if he's paying for everything and I'm paying for nothing, what kind of a guardianship are you going to make for your wife? SubhanAllah. Sometimes brothers also have to wake up to the reality. So you need to get yourself with a job, get an income, Get yourself educated. Because at the end of the day, you are taking on a responsibility of somebody's child, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. And if you are unable to meet that responsibility, then it is not justice. You're not being fair to that Muslim, a Muslimah. Just like you wouldn't want your own members of your family to put in that situation. We wouldn't want for our sisters to be in that situation either. Our daughters, at the end of the day, the daughters of the Muslimin. But brothers and sisters, if you want to know who the ideal partner is, if you want to know the qualities that you should be looking for, then you need to look to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. And if you go to Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention, and in other Quranic ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, in Surah Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَالطَّيِّبَاتُ لِلطَّيِّبِينَ وَالطَّيِّبُونَ لِلطَّيِّبَاتِ. And women of purity are for men of purity, and men of purity are for women of purity. Do we expect a man who's been around, he's been here and been there, well known to be in the circle of women and girls, do you expect him to have a wife pure, but he's been around? Or vice versa, that a girl who's had many relationships with guys, that she should expect a pure guy? Subhanallah. Like for like. Allah says in the Quran, like for like. So if you are good in your nature and your character, then that's the person who suits you. You know the English people, they say, or they normally say, opposites attract. Not in this case. Definitely not in this case. If a person, they moved away from the lifestyle of mid-tawbah and became committed in the religion, became from the muttaqeen, those who fear Allah, then of course that is to be wiped clean from them, inshallah. Allah forgive those sins. And neither is a person required to say what they did in the past. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala screened them from their sins, they need to screen themselves by not announcing the sins that they've done. What happened between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If Allah screened it, keep it hidden. In fact, the hadith of Rasulullah said that the worst person in the sight of Allah is a person who does a sin by night and Allah screened it, and the daytime they announce it. And the person who did a sin in the daytime, Allah screened it, and the nighttime they announced it. This is the worst person in the sight of Allah. So no matter what sins that we've done, they're in the past, keep them in the past. In order to bring them up. Those qualities by which we should be looking for in a spouse. Somebody who is a Muslim, believer, devout, adhering to the religion of Islam. Somebody who is patient and constant. Somebody who humbles himself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody who gives sadaqah, is charitable. Somebody who fasts regular and stays away from their desires. Somebody who guards their chastity. And somebody who engages much in praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. That's the kind of person we should be looking for. That's the comprehensive package. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described that person. This is not fiction, this is fact. So therefore, we should keep looking. And you know what? One thing, don't think that you're going to meet the first person, the love of your life, in the first meeting. It could be second, third, fourth, fifth. Some people, it can take up to 10 or 15 tries before they find a match. Here the key is not to rush. When a person rushes into something, then they have regret later. And the Prophet said, that the haste is from the shaitan. Rushing something is from shaitan. Here, taking your time, asking people's opinion, those who are knowledgeable, those who are elder, those who understand, taking from them advice. Because sometimes we see things in a blinkered fashion. We think, oh, this person, yeah, right person. And maybe something that another person will say, well, maybe this person's not right for you. It happens many times. A person might have a certain perception of a person, but maybe they don't meet on certain issues. And the last thing you want to do is to have compatibility issues in the marriage. At the end of the day though, as I mentioned earlier, that even if you find the so-called right person for you, don't think that life is always smooth, like a sea without any waves on it. Without doubt, there will be sometimes instances or things you'll find which you're not happy with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this. فَإِن كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And if you take a dislike to them, it may be that you dislike a thing and Allah brings about through it a great deal of good. Perfection is in no human being except one, Ar-Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We're not perfect. Don't expect perfection either. So brothers and sisters, here, going out, searching, researching, investigating, and then when we think we found that person, as I said, ask each other. You can go with a list of questions if you want to. You might not get all the answers though. But here, maybe by a third party, because here, fact of the matter is, nobody in that meeting in front of the parents are going to give all the correct answers or true answers that they want to give. Answers from the heart are not always there. Therefore, it might be an idea to send your sister or an auntie, okay, personally on a separate day, you know, have a private meeting with her and her to ask some extra questions. Nothing wrong in that, inshallah. Sometimes people generally do feel shy to say things in front of the parents, maybe because their parents have a different view about certain things, or maybe they don't want the parents to get offended. For example, some parents don't want to have their children educated further, and they just want to marry them, and they won't like to see their son or daughter doing certain further education, or working. Some people don't want to work. Some people might say, oh, I have no problem with my spouse working. So all these things are questions. Issue of children, issue of when can you see your parents, how often, and so forth. All these things are part of the process that have to be discussed. You know, it's not just about saying, I like you, she likes me, we're going to get married. We have to be a bit more, you know, we have to have more hindsight. We have to look at all the possible scenarios from all angles. This is why it's sometimes good to sit down with a brother or the sister or the sisters or members of family, some friends that you know, good friends who are with a good akhlaq, with good Islam. Say, you know, what kind of things should I be asking? Tell me. Sometimes your list of questions might end up with 5 questions and that's it. Whereas if you take, you know, a shura from people, take consultation, there might be other questions which are very, very important that you should be asking. You know, sometimes, you know, I remember one brother who went for a marriage interview, and when they asked him what kind of any questions, he's looked blank, and what kind of question should we be asking for? What should we be asking? You know, subhanAllah. Mental block can happen. People just climb up sometimes, with fright sometimes, or nervousness, and they're like, ooh, can't speak. It's natural. It can happen. So at least they have something written down, you know, or maybe the parents can be with them and say, well, I want to ask this question just in case I forget. Just give me a prod, give me, you know, oh, you want to answer this question as well. It helps in the process. And as I said, that even if once the initial marriage meeting has taken place and you're supposed to give an answer, of course you should think about this. Make istikhara. It's not straight away answer yes or no. It should never be like that. Yeah. So here, look at things such as have you met in terms of, and you come to agreement as to the future, what you like, what you'd like to do, what you expect your wife to do. Expectations are very important when it comes to marriage. What do we assume the role of the wife to be? Tell her this is what I expect, or tell him, my husband, I expect him to be this. Do they agree? Because the last thing you want is like not to ask these things and suddenly after marriage, oh, I want X, she wants Y. Or I like black, he likes white, so forth. The opposites. That will be a recipe for clashing. That's what you do not want. So all these things, even as I said, if it means you make a list of these things, put them out, write them out, type them out if you want to put it on your phone, whatever, and be prepared on that day. In terms of the mahar, here, sadly, one of the things that in many countries is prohibiting people from getting married, it's an obstacle, is the mahar. The dowry, which is the sunnah, which is part of the marriage contract, in fact, that it should be something which is not a burden. It should not be a burden on a person. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ explained in the hadith that the mahar, which is of less, this is the barakah. Today you find tens of thousands of pounds as mahar. Subhanallah. We ask this to those people who ask this, is your daughter better than Fatima radiallahu anha? Go find out what the mahar was. And then see, is it justified to ask tens of thousands of pounds? Subhanallah. This is the mentality we have to learn to change. We have to move away from this. We're not saying don't give gifts and things like that, gold or jewelry or whatever. This is something which creates more love and creates respect between the families. But in terms of the actual marriage contract, where you have the mahar stipulated, it should be something which is not a burden on the groom. Here, the husband and wife, both of them should be aware of their rights. Now that itself will take 2 or 3 lectures to deliver. But in general, the Prophet ﷺ informed us, and this sisters who are married as well as not married, this bit of advice should be taken on board with extreme attention. Because this is one of the things that today's societies, again, is leading to the problems in marriage. And this is the advice which was given in the last khutbah, the last sermon of the Prophet ﷺ, the meaning of which is, and it is your right, meaning the men, it is your right that they do not make friends with any of whom you do not approve, as well as never to be unjust. And he mentions also that not to let anybody into your house whom you do not approve, meaning the husband does not approve. Nor to let anybody sit on your bed whom you disapprove, who you do not approve of. Now sometimes you find women coming to the house of the husband or the marriage house, and the husband maybe doesn't like that person because of certain bad character, and yet the woman will say, she's my friend, not your friend. What's your problem? Subhanallah. The problem is that you disobey Rasul ﷺ in this matter. That Allah gave this right to the man. Of course, a man should not unnecessarily be like that. But at the end of the day, if the man feels that that particular person will be a very, very bad influence on his wife, he has the right to tell her, no, that person cannot enter this house. That is the right. As regards to the woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the woman her rights through the Prophet ﷺ when he said that if they abide by your right, then know that you've taken them as an amana in covenant, as an agreement, mithaq. And that if they abide by your right, meaning that they agree to fulfill the rights of the husband, is that you should treat them with kindness. Treat them with kindness. SubhanAllah. How many incidences, how many cases have we heard about a woman being abused, beaten, mental abuse, physical abuse? SubhanAllah. This is prevalent in our communities, to the extent where even they are prevented from seeing their own members of their family. SubhanAllah. Beaten because Islam allows it, inverted commas, which Islam allows the beating of women in the manner that shows all these people do it. And that beating was to avoid the face. And even when the Prophet explained, when he said using a miswak, asked this question, did the Prophet ﷺ beat his wives? Never. Never. Why? Because the noble character that he had, ﷺ, his wives loved him for that. And if the man was to have that noble character, like the Prophet ﷺ, then there will be no need for the women to fall into this kind of bickering and all these marital problems that you find. Having wisdom with the wife, gentleness, mercy, compassion, overlooking her faults. And that's another thing, that when we brothers get married and sisters get married, too often the man feels that he has the authority and he's going to make all the decisions. Yes, without doubt. But there's certain things that you have to overlook. And one of those things is that there's some faults in the woman. When the Prophet ﷺ described the woman like a curved rib, that she has crookedness in her. And the most crookedness, the most curved part of that rib is the head. She has some crookedness there. And the Prophet ﷺ explained that if you try to straighten it, that crookedness, it will break, meaning it will result in divorce. So here sometimes, for the men, they are required to overlook certain factors, feigning certain weaknesses in the woman. When a person went to Umar al-Khattab to ask him, because he was complaining about his wife, Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he approached the house, near the house, he heard the wife of Umar, she was giving a right telling off, having a right ear bashing to him. And he said, okay. And he started to walk back. And Umar saw this man walking back. He knew he'd come to him. He was, what's up? He said, well, I've got problems with my wife. But when I heard what's happening in your house with your wife, he said, my problem is nothing compared to yours. And he walked out of the class. But here sometimes, Umar was the one who was very shadeed and everything, very strict. But when he came to women, he overlooked them. So all these aspects we should take into account. Marriage is not a game. It is a whole lifetime's commitment. So we choose the person. We have to be careful. We have to make sure we've thought about what we're doing. Are we ready for this commitment? Are we the right person for this particular person? And as parents, are we choosing for the right reasons as well? So all of these factors will play an important part in bringing two people together, inshallah, to bring a marriage which will be solid, where, as the saying goes, till death do us part. This is something brief which I managed to put together to convey to my brothers and sisters, and I hope that inshallah ta'ala whatever you've heard of khair will benefit us today, and that no doubt is from Allah. If there's anything which is incorrect, which I've said today or wrong, then of course it's from the weakness of myself and from the shaitan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us each and every one of us our righteous good deeds, and to overlook and forgive our sins. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I think that no questions. That's good for me.
Sheikh, if you regard forced marriages,
Yes.
parents were given choice to their children, and then when the marriages don't work out, and there's a rift between the parents and the children, mostly from the parents because they think that the children have let themselves down. What sort of advice have you got for them parents?
I think here what the brothers are asking that and I don't like to use the word forced marriage, but I understand what you're saying. In a forced marriage or a marriage which occurred where people were unhappy, either one party or both parties were unhappy, and if that marriage was to break down later, and that results in a rift between parents and the children. You mentioned that sometimes it's from the parents, the distancing, because they feel like they let them down by not working that marriage. Without doubt, first and foremost, as I mentioned, that everything that we do, we should do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And out of all the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal, the most disliked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that of divorce. Here, first and foremost, there should be effort made from every side when the signs of marital discord, of problems emerge in the marriage. And that would include people from the girl's side and from the boy's side. This should be done. Not gather to have a go at each other, oh, your son is this and your daughter's like this. No, but to make repatriation on the basis of correcting each one's participant. For example, if I have a daughter and she has a problem, la qadar Allah, with the husband, then I should look towards my daughter and see what are the faults in her. I'm not here to make the faults in the person, but say, okay, what is the fault? What can we reconcile? What can what can we do to make this situation better? And similarly, but what happens in this case? In-laws are at each other's throats. It's your son, it's your daughter. So this is what's not happening, which should be happening. Taking advice based upon the Quran and Sunnah from knowledgeable people, not to be biased, by saying, oh, only one, because what happens sometimes, only one side of the story is heard. Marriage counselling should be available in every single masjid, because there are marriage problems everywhere you go. Here, people should not brush it under the carpet. They should go to the Sheikh, go to the Imam, based upon Quran and Sunnah. He'll be advising them to the best of his ability, inshallah. If not, put it forward to scholars who are able to advise. So this is what should be happening, and it's not. But if that happened where it resulted in a divorce, first and foremost, we have to accept that this is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The good and the bad of it. This is the belief of the Muslim. But this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. That does mankind think just because they say we believe that they will not be tested? This is a test in life. Allah will test you with wife, with the children, with your wealth. Allah will test you in these matters. The hunger, all these are tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, parents also have to realize that maybe they made a mistake as well. Of course, as I said, every parent wants to see the best for their child, for their son or daughter. But sometimes parents should also acknowledge the fact maybe we made a mistake. Okay, it's happened, qadarullah. But here the thing is to move forward. If what you're saying in a situation where the parents are distancing themselves, then here the advice, brother, to you is, to anyone in that situation, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, that ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حسنا وإن جاهداك لتشرك بما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما. That we've enjoined you to be dutiful to your parents. But if they attempt to make partners with worshiping Allah, make shirk, then obey them not. Not only that, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that there is no obedience to the created if it means disobedience to the Creator. Yani we can't make our parents happy if it means Allah will be angry with us. In fact, not only parents, anybody, anything. We cannot have our obedience or to make pleasure for somebody if it means Allah will be angry. Other than that, our parents are to be obeyed in every matter. So here, if it's that relationship, the best thing is to have good akhlaq towards your parents. Even if they're swearing at you, they're shouting at you, you treat them, you be patient, and you give them the best akhlaq always. Don't even go to them, and say it was your fault this happened. This happened, it happened. Make an excuse for them, and move ahead. We learn from our mistakes, inshallah. But definitely do not be the one who causes the one to have that rift even further between, if a person in a situation should always deal with them in the best possible way. Their feelings might have feelings of anger and resentment. Keep them inside. Why? The reward of birr al-walidain will be Jannah, inshallah. Of having goodness and serving the parents. This is one of the keys for us to enter Jannah. In fact, if I remember the hadith, the meaning of the hadith, that the Prophet said, one of the people who will be in hellfire is where a person's parent, the father or the mother died, and they were not dutiful to their parents. That can be a cause for us to enter Jahannam. Subhan Allah, we seek Allah's refuge from that. Another question here. How is the mahr calculated? Very good question. There is no calculation of mahr as such. There's no formula. The mahr is what is easy for you. And if you were to calculate the sunnah mahr that the Prophet gave, between 9 and 20 pounds. Between 9, if you translate it into today's money, it's between 9 and 20 pounds. SubhanAllah. And here, as I said, the issue is making it easy. And I remember watching a clip on YouTube, and you'll see a very famous clip. One of our imams, our Shuyookh, mashallah, Sheikh ibn Uthaimeen rahimahullah, in his dars, he was relating an incident. He said the man, he was asked to conduct the marriage contract, the aqd. And when he conducted, he said, okay, what's the mahr for your daughter? And the man said, 1 riyal. The Sheikh said, I thought I misheard. He said, how much? He said, 1 riyal. The Sheikh said, SubhanAllah, look at this man. Look at this man, what he's done. He's made it easy for that person to marry his daughter. He said, which man in this day and age has the guts, has the courage to do that and be an example for people to follow? SubhanAllah. Because he understands the issue that the mahr is something which is not to be a burden, rather less it is the blessing. In fact, Sahaba got married for an iron ring, mahr, or even less for the Quran that they knew. You're talking about £1,000, 2,000, Sahaba, those who say we follow. They were married on the basis of the Quran they knew. That was their mahr. SubhanAllah. So there is no specific calculation of mahr. However, whatever you want to give, which is affordable, you can give that. Mahr can be, by the way, given before the marriage contract, on the day of the marriage contract, or after, delayed. As long as there's an agreement on that, no problem with that. Allahu A'lam.